You're muted, Tony.
Oh, sorry. Good afternoon. This is the Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 11, 2021, 2 p.m. session. No public testimony during the review session. Since we ran long on the morning calendar, we're going to take a break and resume at 2:30.
Correct.
And we will commence, so the first case will be a recall of a case from yesterday's hearing,
Right.
correct?
Correct. Okay.
Which is 2018-178A.
Great. Thank you very much. See you all at 2:30. Apologies to the public, but we really need to take a break. Okay.
Okay.
See you later. It's 2:30, everyone. Okay, we have everyone. Tony, we read the comments in for the review session on the first one, right?
Yeah,
Yesterday. Okay, so that means we should do the review session first and then Mr. Rampula's case, right? Because first it's review, then it's the hearing.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't think it would work that way, but okay. Sorry.
No, otherwise it goes from hearing to review to hearing.
Yeah, sorry, okay.
That's all right.
I told him to be at 2:30. I told him to clock in at 2:30, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. It won't take that long, I don't think.
Okay.
You're texting him?
No, I'm gonna,
Okay.
should I not text him
Yeah, you can.
and tell him that we're gonna do the review session first? All right.
Mhm. Okay, we're ready when you can start recording now. Thanks.
We're ready? We're live?
Mhm.
Okay, good afternoon. This is the Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 11th, 2021, 2 p.m. session. No public testimony during the review session. The first item up is zoning calendar, continued hearing items. Number 25, 2019, 91 BZ, 9709 24th Avenue, Queens.
Right, so just for the case that's coming up before, we already read the commissioner's comments in the review session yesterday, so we're not going to repeat them, correct?
Right, I'm sorry, I'll pull that number. 2018 178A 2 Oak Tree Way. We read the reviews, the comments yesterday, yesterday's review session and public hearing for May 10th.
Right,
So
okay.
we'll recall that a little later.
Okay, so we're going to do now 2019 91 BZ 9709 24th Avenue continued hearing. Okay, so on this one, the ask has been reduced to respond to board comments. It is now proposed as a semi-detached one family with one parking space and a small increase in floor area to be more akin to area standards for one family homes, which is at 1,616 square feet. The conclusions about the size and the, let's say, about the uniqueness of the site and the appropriate sizes and yard conditions and floor area and so forth, I found were supported by carefully prepared area studies that are both graphically very clear and research driven. I thought the very brief statement of facts was clear and went through the findings. And actually, just to add on to that, the brevity of the statement of facts, because it's just simple statements, it's not redundant. So it's quite interesting. You can just get all the facts, please, and then that's it. It's not redundant. It tells you what you need to know. I'd also like to compliment this applicant for his very responsive and clear submission. He's a real listener and listens to board comments and is instantly responsive. The applicant did a search but was unable to find a reciprocal easement for the parking. So it seems like this property owner can't take advantage of that parking strip. And so my only other comment was there is what's called a splay diagram at drawing A401, which I believe is intended to show the area under the roof pitch for a floor area deduction. We've had some experience with this at DOB, where the DOB conclusion has been, unless this applicant has a different experience, that deduction is only available if the area is under a roof. That is in an attic, not under a ceiling with an attic above. So the architect should verify that because he's relying on something like 193 square feet under the splay, right? The exterior finished materials are of improved quality and acceptable. So those are my only comments. Vice Chair Shanda.
I concur with you. This has been a much simplified, I think, ask, and based on all the analysis that the applicant has provided, seems like a very reasonable. It's unfortunate that the easement really does not have much give, but I think this is a reasonable outcome of the solution. I had similar thought about the display, and I recall there was an application we had in, I think it was also another variance for a corner lot in Southeast Queens, near the, I think, North Conduit, that area. And there also the use of splay was used. It was very similar. It had an attic, but it was not an attic that's a usable attic. It's like a crawl space. And I think that's what the applicant had stated, that in that case it's considered a roof because it's not a usable. In this case, I think the attic is barely like 3 feet or 4 feet. So I think, if I seem to remember, that was the argument that was used why this was allowed. I would like the applicant to clarify if that's the guide, that's still being applied by DOB in terms of waiving the floor area. But other than that, I'm very satisfied with this application.
Okay, thank you.
I though had one question. The applicant submitted a revised DOB objection, and I was going through my note and I didn't quite understand why the applicant went through that. Because one of the asks was the planting. It does require, and I didn't see that in the DOB objection unless it's covered under the bigger number of, I think, whatever that section is, 2345, and it gets covered under that.
So in other words, they did submit another objection?
It seems there was an updated DOB objection, but there was no change in the list of objections. Oh. And so I wasn't quite clear why that was provided. Why, if we had asked that, I went through my notes and I couldn't locate anywhere. But it did not include the planting requirement, which is ZR 23451. That was not added, but ZR 2345 is there. So is it covered under that? That's the ground. So I just want that clarification. That's all.
Okay. All right, thank you. Commissioner Otley-Brown?
I agree with the two of you that this is a much more modest project that is well supported by the FAR study and the side yard study.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Commissioner Sheta.
Thank you, Chair. I have no further comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Shibeta.
I want to thank the applicant for being responsive, and I have no further comments.
Okay, thanks.
Item number 26, 2019-92 BZ, 2339 98th Street, Queens.
Okay, sorry, one second. Okay. This project, because it's the same applicant and relatives who are the property owners. This project has also been revised to resemble the previous application. So now is a one-family with parking and a complying rear yard, and requesting a small FAR waiver and essential side yard waivers to make the building comparable to area residential buildings. There were also very clear studies to support the requested waivers. The main really open issue, if you want to say that, is that of the self-created hardship, since this lot was held in common ownership with the neighbor and until there was a tax lien foreclosure and sale. The applicant, who's I believe is an architect, is not familiar with the line of cases that address this question, although there is a mention of the intervening foreclosure sale in the statement of facts. There wasn't a kind of reliance on prior board cases. So kind of for the record, I would like to, and in our last hearing, it was Todd Dale who actually was listening in and volunteered the name of the case. So for the record, the facts in 127-14-BZ, which is 32-01 41st Street, are similar to the facts here, where adjoining properties were held in common ownership and were broken up by a tax lien foreclosure and subsequent sale. Our resolution in this case should refer to that case as what was considered in that case an acceptable intervening event. So assuming that our council is okay with that and the commissioners are okay with that, I didn't have any other comments, and I'm happy that we could get to a quick resolution on this case. So,
Okay.
Shonda. Oh yeah, Kurt, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, okay.
Okay, thank you. So that was our council saying okay. Vice Chair Shonda.
I concur with you. I have no additional comments. Again, the same comment from the previous one as to the DOB objection. Updated DOB objection was submitted, just again for clarification why that was provided. Okay, thanks.
And also the question about display, right?
That's right, yes.
Okay, Commissioner Ollie Brown.
I'm in agreement about this case being also a modest ask, so I really don't have any problems with it.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Sheta,
Thank you, Chair. Same here. I have no further comments.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Nothing further from me, Chair. I'm okay with this application.
Okay,
New cases, item number 27, 2020-84BZ, 161 Emerson Place, Brooklyn.
okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and a notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. The community board recommends approval. This application is a combined special permit for the bulk waivers available under it. It's a special permit under 73-623. And it's also an application under 7221, relying on the Catholic Charities expansion of the Cornell deference doctrine for the provision of low income and very low income housing, with 100% of the units directed at persons and families with incomes below 60% of average median income, AMI. One of the prerequisites for eligibility under this expanded doctrine is that it is only available to not-for-profit housing development entities with an established track record in the development of ground-up construction containing low-income, permanently affordable housing for the targeted population. I think the materials outline very clearly this applicant's eligibility under the Catholic Charities standards, with ground-up construction experience for projects similar in size to that proposed here. The first 7 pages of the statement of facts, this is really a comment about organizing sort of the writing and the novel kind of. The first 7 pages of the statement of facts seems to be missing a beat, and then it jumps to a reference to existing units on the site without ever setting it up. So it's kind of a confusing narrative. You're supposed to start off with the existing site is made up of the following things. We don't find out until page 7 what the existing site has on it. So please careful when you write. Apparently, there is an existing 38-unit building on site, and those units are viewed as inadequate. So the proposal is to either enlarge or tear the building down and build new. And I'm saying either enlarge because by page 7, I still don't know whether we're tearing down the building. So I guess my question about this approach is that it will take 38 units offline for a few years and displace current residents, unless it's a vacant building, I don't know. So given housing shortages and this organization's vast experience with rehabs, why isn't this proposal for this site a rehab and perhaps an enlargement of it with the requested waivers? So that I mean, it's an old building which may be really, really well constructed. Often they're better constructed than new buildings. So that was my question. And with the renewed interest also in what we call micro units, the small size of the existing units seems in line with those micro units, and the proposed 300 square foot studios are hardly larger than the existing 283 square foot ones, understanding that some need to be 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, but that could be in the nature of some interior rehab and enlargement and so on. So that's just how come you're approaching a project like this way. And part of my concern is what happens to the current residents. We've seen fantastic projects in the city where the residents aren't disturbed. They continue to live in the place. New construction goes on site and even above. And then the residents are moved out of those units for rehab, and then either moved back into their units or permanently relocated to the other units. So that's why I'm asking about that. The as of right scenario seems actually quite odd to me, since there is an existing non-complying building already on the site that is underdeveloped by 5,000 square feet. So it could be enlarged horizontally. So I think that the as of right needs to not be new construction. It needs to be, and by the way, the EAS says the no build is leaving it alone as it is. So with not-for-profits, though, we often look at a no build building out to the maximum allowable, and then they just live with it. So it's kind of a different standard than it would be if it was a for-profit. If it were a for-profit, you don't do anything. If it's a not-for-profit, the no build is doing what you're allowed to do as of right and kind of living with the deficiencies. So, and the reason that's relevant is because, which I'll talk about later, has to do with shadow studies and things like that, the delta between the as of right developed full versus the proposed. On applications that rely on the type of deference sought here, we receive no guidance from the agencies that provide funding or further review of the project to ascertain the project's compliance with their funding or design standards, and no guidance with respect to a project's financial feasibility or its potential overreach with respect to funding sources. So we read the applicant's requests, its own rationale for needing twice the allowable FAR, unit counts, and height, and can only base our determination that it is the minimum variance necessary on our general understanding of the development costs and funding mechanics as outlined by the applicant, the essential need for low-income housing in New York City, the obvious essential need, and the project's impact on neighborhood character. So my comments are focused on those issues. The unit mix is studios, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms. In the context of the proposed residence, I certainly understand the need for the 2 bedrooms, but I'd like to understand the need for studios and 1 bedrooms. We're told that this program is oriented to putting families back together. So I don't understand the idea in that context of the studios and the 1 bedrooms, unless those are all oriented towards the people who are not participants in that family unification program. So the statement of facts, and Mr. Bieber, who's the sort of housing finance consultant, The statement of facts in Mr. Bieber's memo state that 80 units is the magic number that makes the project viable. However, we see this not-for-profit develop ground-up buildings with only 40 to 45 units and is currently working on a project with 70 units, which number is inconsistent with Mr. Bieber's statement that HPD's supportive housing loan program won't consider a project with fewer than 75 units. So I ask, why are 80 units the number in this case? And there's a project currently under construction or on the verge of construction right now. Maybe it's under construction for a 70-unit building at 839 St. Mark's Avenue, which has the same projected project cost as this one, but it even includes restoration of a mansion in a historic district and construction quality befitting Landmarks Commission approval. So I'd like them to explain the apparent discrepancy in the 80 is the absolute minimum when a 70-unit, much more expensive project is also acceptable. That's being developed right now. And I'd also like to know why not stop the ask at 4.8 FAR, which is equal to the community facility as of right in an R6. Like, why go so much higher than that? So it's there, the ask is 5.99. So, and I hope that Mr. Bieber or Biber, I maybe mispronouncing his name, should attend the hearing. I'd like them to provide the backup for the analysis that it concluded 80 units is the number, and that the other numbers, because there was a study of several other number ranges, that those other numbers don't work. It's the chart that was provided is conclusory. We looked at this many units, that many units, and that many units, and here's the answer, they don't work. Commissioner Otley Brown will remind me, but when we looked at a project, one of these projects recently, there was another kind of a balancing factor, and I can't remember what it is. So if you can remember what it is, please remind me when you have your comments. So I'd also like to know if it's possible to get even a soft commitment letter from HPD for this project, because we actually have nothing from them, not even a soft general, like we feel warm and fuzzy about the project, nothing. This 11-story, 110-foot high, 60,000 square feet, 5.99 FAR building is across the street from a public park on which it will cast shadows. So we need detailed incremental shadow studies. The Department of Parks has asked for this as well. Incremental shadow studies should take into account shadows caused by other buildings in the area, as well as those that would be caused by an as-of-right building. So that's what I'm getting at here. So right now, the incremental shadow studies that were provided show a shadow impact on the park, but I don't know what the impact is of the existing building or what the impact would be of the existing building enlarged by the 5,000 square feet horizontally. So the shadow study isn't clear about whether the incremental shadows are only for the new building, or, as I say, take into consideration the height of the as-of-right or existing building. And they provided some 3D shadow studies for the church, but they didn't provide it for the park, which is arguably a more sensitive receptor, because we do have an LPC sign-off on the shadow study with respect to the church, which is landmarked. So it seems that LPC, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, but it seems like LPC was okay with the shadows on the church. Maybe it doesn't have stained glass windows. It could be, or they're somehow, whatever. Usually that's what it is. They're concerned about stained glass windows that are contributing to the landmark. And when a church doesn't have stained glass, then it's a non-issue. Because the building is much taller than its immediately adjacent neighbors, and all sides of it will be visible from a distance. We need renderings from all directions similar to what was provided of the front of the building, taken from the park. That we got one rendering from there. If you look at the urban design analysis in the EAS, it does kind of a massing study from, I think, from two sides, but it doesn't do it from the rear or the other side. And it's just a massing study. So some kind of, I don't, computers do fast renderings now. So the extent to which the computer can sort of generate a rendering without getting into all the little bitty details of the windowsills, that would be helpful. The rear facade, as shown in the only other elevation provided is sad, to say the very least. This building cannot turn its back on the community. The statement of facts paints a prettier picture of the building than the drawings do. Show materials on the elevations, articulate the rear facade to break up the massing of this 175-foot long, 110-foot high wall. The front of the building is very cognizant of the fact that the building is long. So it steps back. It steps away from itself and it steps down, but the rear is just a sheer wall, for lack of a better word, prison-like in its appearance with these tiny little windows cut out. So please don't do that for a neighborhood, something that should be a contribution to the neighborhood. We also need information on how the side yard will be treated. There's this very wide, I think it's a 36-foot wide side yard with no information on what's going on with that. There's also a rear yard waiver request, so we need a study on its impacts to the adjacent properties. The building is tall, yet not developed full to the side lot lines, and the roof at the setback floor is not accessible to residents. The statement of fact states that it is the shallow site that is driving up the building height. That may be true, but the massing doesn't take full advantage of the lot area. So it's also responsible for driving up the building height. So explain why the decision was to make it taller rather than broader. And so because the other part of it is to say that, for instance, you want open space there and there's no access by the tenants to the setback roofs. There's a playground right across the street. So in terms of where the kids who live in this building will play and so on, there's a playground right across the street. And it seems like if you spread it out full to the site, you get some additional stepping that would allow for more use of the rooftops, therefore more, say, protected private open space. The rendering shows the second floor setback landscaped. Provide a second floor plan. We didn't get a second floor plan. Instead it says 2 to 10. So the second floor plan is actually a different floor plan than 3 to 10. And so I'd like to know whether the rendering is just a pretty picture or is there tenant access to that floor, and if not, why not? The not-for-profits Nevin Street project is actually, this goes back to something I was saying before, is a really interesting example that includes horizontal and vertical enlargement of an existing building that might be more contextual in the subject case, because I know the subject building and have, even though it's not a landmark, even though it's not in a historic district, I've always admired this building because the brickwork and the lintels are actually very nicely handled. So it's a classic tenement building or not classic, it's actually an unusual new law tenement building with a kind of rear yard cutouts, courtyards. But I was curious because they did this Nevin Street project, which grows on top of and next to an existing building. And so I was curious why they didn't take a similar approach in this case. I think it's the same architect. In the Catholic Charities application, the residents were seniors under the AIRS program, for which zoning required a certain minimum area of support services. I understand that this program also requires support services, but as with the Catholic Charities application, the expanded deference doctrine is not available to other uses unrelated to the 60% AMI residents. So the restrictive declaration must specify that these services are for the exclusive use of the residents. And with respect to that, how was the size of the supportive services on the cellar and first floor determined? According to the statement of facts, only 11 more program dwelling units will be provided in this building than in the existing building. But the supportive services space in the proposed is significantly larger than what is provided at the existing building, according to the plans we were given. So please explain that. It's a very different services program. And one of the reasons that I asked this is that when we talk about the waiver is supposed to be related to the program for which deference is available. So if there's a lot of support services that are not justified, then effectively that floor is driving the height waiver and the floor area waiver. So you really need to tie in the supportive services to the occupancy and tightly tie it in. The question is also, are the services that are being provided available to the residents who are not participating in the ICL program? For example, I don't see doors that might exclude non-participants from program spaces. And since children are participants, how are they protected when they're participating in these programs from the imposition of non-program enrolled residents? Since this is a mix of general low income and specific program residents. Also clarify on the drawings which of these spaces, the program spaces, are required for quality housing buildings, which does have some amount of recreational space required. And I'd like the restrictive declaration to be modified to clarify that all dwelling units will be provided to tenants whose annual income is at or below 60% of AMI for the life of the building. When I was looking at the wording in the restrictive declaration, I found it a little too vague. I'm concerned that the wording that refers to, quote, affordable housing units as a defined term could be confused with the goal of 60% of AMI, because affordable housing units can be higher than 60%. So it needs to be very clear that we're not focusing on the defined term of affordable housing units. We're focusing on 60% of AMI. On the 73-623 special permit, I understand that maybe they took out this request from the special permit, but I didn't find it when I was reviewing the drawings. They're applying it in what I saw in the drawings and in the statement of facts to height and setback waiver. And I actually don't see how that applies in this case, because the way I read the special permit and the way it has been applied in the past, which is actually only one case, the maximum height that the BSA can allow in an R6 is 85 feet for height and 65 feet for minimum base height, which is only 10 feet more in building height than allowed as of right, which is the reason we've seen only one of these applications since the special permit was created in 2016. Though we were involved in discussions about this special permit, basically city planning didn't want to listen to us. So the CPC report sheds no light to clarify possible bad drafting. So the height waiver needs to be in the variance portion of the application. And so perhaps you only get yards with the special permit. And the whole idea of having the special permit was to reduce the number of requested waivers in the variance, but it may not serve that much of a purpose. Okay, so Vice Chair Chong.
I don't know what's going on here. Thank you. Just want to just scrolling through my notes. So very simple, couple of FAR issue in the statement of fact, I would like the applicant to clarify the community facility FAR as stated in the statement of fact. Community facility FAR with sleeping accommodation is 2.43 versus for community facility use without sleeping accommodation is 4.8. So the applicant should clearly state that in the statement of fact. The applicant could make a comparison using 4.8 FAR, given that, I mean, if the applicant is using the 4.8 FAR, it could make that comparison, but then it should use the fact that it's making the 4.8 FAR because of the neighborhood context, which is predominantly built with use group 3, community facility uses where 4.8 FAR would be allowed, and these are non-sleeping accommodation community facility uses. I have to say, whatever I'm going to say now, it's based on my past experience and knowledge at HPD dealing with supportive homes when we were reviewing the design guidelines for supportive housing. We were looking at the support service spaces and how much support service spaces should be provided for a housing development for such residences. And so a lot of my question stems from that, and I know what the answer would be, but I would like it to be on record. The 5,000 square foot space that the applicant is proposing, I think compared to, again, from my past experience, it is very reasonable. It's an 8% ask of the total floor area. However, I would like the applicant to clarify they have provided a chart which provides the outline of each one of the program spaces. My question is regarding some of the program spaces, such as the tenant lounge, activity room, family service room, and the computer lab, and the tenant workspace. Will they be used simultaneously? Will there be simultaneous utilization of these spaces? And if so, therefore, do they warrant to be separate spaces, or are there other reasons why these need to be separate spaces and cannot be, some of these spaces could be programmed for multiple purposes.
Mhm.
So that's a question. Though, I mean, looking at the site plan, it's not like to add to any units, but just a question I have in terms of, because most of the spaces are in the basement where you don't get any.
No, they're on the first, everything's on.
And also, both. So you have the computer lab, you have the tenant workspace, you have the couple of other support service programs in the basement, and then there are the other ones, the caseworker's office and the other places are also on the first floor. So it's distributed between the first floor and the basement. So not definitely eliminating them gets you any additional units. It's just it's a question of ask of how much of that is absolutely needed in terms of running the program, and could some of these space be multi-purposed.
Mhm. Because I'm trying to understand what you said. Some of it is in the cellar, obviously that wouldn't get you units, but
Right.
on the first floor, the entire first floor is somehow programmatic space stuff, right? Other than the obvious lobby and things like that.
Right.
So you could get units if those spaces were redundant. So you might be able to add, we've seen one where half the first floor is tenants and the other half is supportive space. So that, I guess that's the question is, why do you need that whole first floor and the basement?
Well,
Cellar?
you could. It's just that these spaces are typically desired on the first floor, and typically, I mean, again, unless the guidelines have changed, don't encourage housing on the ground, units on the ground floor of more to allow for privacy, especially for vulnerable community. And so in terms of the location, I'm okay. It's just trying to understand, are all of these spaces needed? And if that will reduce also some of the cost of construction, it also goes towards that. With regards to the question that you have raised, why couldn't the existing building? I also have, I think for me, it's more of an explanation that they need to lay out why the existing building cannot be repurposed and enlarged. I mean, looking at the plan and based on the Hpd Design Guidelines, I fully understand why these units will not meet the Hpd Design Guidelines, especially for family. You know, something I need to tell you about the micro units. When the micro unit project was going on, at that time, I think I was in the architecture, I was heading the architecture department there. I don't remember, but the discussion was going on. And what was interesting is that, you know, what we realized that if we had to lay out the micro unit for a household earning less than, you know, 60% of AMI, those furnitures will end up being very, very expensive to accommodate the very basic need, because many of these are going to be modular units and modular furniture, not your very simple, cost-effective furniture that one could buy. And I think there was quite a bit of a backlash, I would say, from the providers and from the services that may not be desirable for low-income households, because they have their own furniture, which are much more of a different character and build and may not fit into a micro unit. So I just kind of wanted to tell you anecdotally as a fact. Just so you know, I know you're chuckling hearing that, but that was a very genuine concern that people raised, and were concerned about imposing micro units sizes for affordable units. So again, I definitely, in terms of the Institute for Community Living, they have the proven track records, and so they definitely meet that test. And the fact that it will be permanently affordable, that's fine. With regards to the neighborhood character, yes, I would like them to explain why at least up to the height of 5 floors or so that matches the height of the abutting building was not built to the lot line and then setting it back to as it's shown, and therefore maybe reducing the bulk of it, unless, again, programmatically, which I think is the answer, but I would like them to answer that, is why an open space was provided along the side lot line, and to that extent, what is that side lot line going to be used for? It is next to the activity lounge and the tenant lounge, so but there aren't no windows facing it, so it's kind of like, what is it going to be used for? So I think if it is not going to be used for open space, which doesn't seem to be totally thought out from the way the building facade is treated, then maybe fill it up to the 6th floor and then reduce the bulk a little bit. I do like the way the building has been designed so far, the way it has tried to break up this enormous massing into 3 smaller bulks and stepping it down away from the intersection. So it is in a way very responsive and to its surrounding, though I think if it can be built to the full lot line to the lower floor, why not? And if that's a waiver to be asked, I think that can be, and that open space can be provided on the 2nd floor or even on the roof. But other than that, I really did not have any comments. It's overall, it's a very well thought out project, and if they could again narratively explain why the existing units cannot be redesigned in the existing footprint and meet the needs or the guidelines of the funding sources.
In other words, why can't the existing building be rehabbed?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Which I think it's because of the financial reason, and if you have to structurally build it, where the structure would fall may further jeopardize the existing layouts. But that's just my take on it, way I see the plan. But the applicant should walk us through those reasons very carefully, and also any programmatic reasons why that cannot be done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Otley Brown.
I definitely am supportive of this project. I think it's a great project. Deeply affordable housing for the general community, coupled with supportive housing for people who are in need of assistance in getting their lives back together in terms of getting their families back to them, is a laudable goal. So I'm very supportive of it. We had a little difficulty in getting the right supporting financial information for me to be able to weigh in on that now. I'm not going to be able to do it. I've been wading through about 30 pages of supportive financial backup to their 3-page letter. So I would like to reserve the right to comment on that if there is a next hearing.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Otley Brown, I couldn't hear you. Your sound just kind of towards the end tailed off.
I think you need to move closer to your mic. Maybe that's it. You're sitting too far back.
How's that? Yeah, my back and my shoulders been killing me today.
Oh, sorry.
But,
Yeah.
what I was saying was, we were having trouble getting the right backup financial information for the 3-page funding letter.
Mhm.
And so I really can't comment on that. I've been trying to wade through it this afternoon, but it's 30 pages of numbers, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would like to reserve some time to look at it and maybe comment on it at the next hearing or ask questions if I have questions. That's
Okay.
what I was saying.
That's fair. Okay. Do you happen to remember what there was this magic ratio where they said if they don't have this, it doesn't balance with this. This was in a case we had, I don't know, last year or something like that for a similar one of these, where that was what we were looking at, where they showed us on a chart, look, this one has this much of this and that much of this, and so they don't match. And this one has this much of that, and this one matches.
I think what this person basically is saying, and I think it's getting at what you're talking about, is that the project is feasible if it meets 2 different equations. And one of them is the capital funding equation, which is that the costs for the project match the money that you're going to get in terms of loans and subsidies. That's on the one hand to construct the project. And then on the other hand, it's that the income that you receive from the rents and the subsidies will cover the maintenance and operating costs and also the debt service for the conventional loan. And so that's basically what their summary letter talks about. And it basically says that 80 units satisfies both of those equations.
Mhm.
At 80 units, you have enough capital funding and subsidies in order to build the project. And at 80 units, you have enough income between the rents that you're collecting and the tax subsidies to cover your maintenance, operating, and debt service. But I just wanted to look through the numbers. It's really very complicated, pages and pages and pages of how it all lays itself out.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. And I think Jella just texted me that it's a debt to income ratio. Does that sound right? Yes. You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Commissioner.
The debt service ratio, is that what you were talking about?
Debt to income. Does that sound right? Ratio?
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is basically a summing up of having enough income to cover your loan. And
Mhm.
based on the amount of income you have, you can borrow a certain amount of money because you could cover your debt service payments with that income.
okay. All right, thank you. So more to follow on that. It's a critical question for whether it's the minimum variance, so. Okay, Commissioner Sheta.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to be repetitive, but first of all, I would like to express my support to the project, wishing to see more projects like that throughout the city. The second thing on keeping the existing building, I believe they should consider that as an option. The existing building is not it's not a small portion as it compares to the proposed. It's almost, I would say it's more than 30, maybe 40% of the proposed. So if they can keep that, and they should consider that, that would be like a considerable cost savings towards the proposed project cost. Especially if you look at the configuration of the building, and I'm looking at an aerial image now, if structural wise, from the structural perspective, it's gonna be probably much easier to build over that building because they have two cut out portions from the footprint of the existing building in the rear. So they can probably put footings, they can put columns within these portions, and they can span over the existing and then build on top of that, meaning that from level 5 and up, that could be the new, I'm talking about within the existing building portion, and they keep whatever underneath that, they keep it as is. All what they need to do, I believe, is to reconfigure these spaces, the existing unit layout, and I don't think this is going to be a hard task for them, especially with these kind of buildings. The structural elements are usually located on the perimeter. So I believe reconfiguring the existing unit layout could be very feasible. I haven't seen a cellar floor plan for the existing scenario. It's not there unless I missed it. But if they haven't submitted that, I would like them to submit the existing cellar plan. I noticed also that they have a detention tank in the proposed, in the cellar. I'm not sure, do they have a detention tank in the existing? And if not, is this a requirement for like constructing the proposed? I don't know, but I don't believe so. The other thing, on the section on drawing PC-006, it mentions 2 classrooms. I'm not sure what are these for, especially when you compare the section to the like the proposed layout. You don't see any classrooms on the floor plan. So I'm not sure if this is just a typo or are they intending to put classrooms in the cellar? They need to clarify that. That's all what I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you repeat what drawing number that is?
It's PC-006 of the proposed set. And this is the section drawing.
Can I answer to that? If you look at PC-002, the computer lab and the tenant workspace, those are the 2 classrooms, because in the program, the applicant also refers to those as possible classrooms where kids will be taught and they can use the computer work, and so that's probably why. But you're right, the naming should be consistent throughout the drawings.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted them to confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you. Commissioner Shibeta.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to be repetitive. I do want to say, I like being repetitive. The ICL is an incredible organization. They have a great history. I certainly agree that they fall into the Cornell doctrine for us. I also think that the timing of this project is right in line for where we are. We certainly need more of this type of housing. I do have similar questions. I don't understand. I'm not exactly sure if they are keeping some of the existing building or if they're completely demolishing it. And what is going to happen to the current inhabitants of this building. Outside of that, I just had some questions about the community around it and how it's keeping within the neighborhood character and what the facade material is. And that's all my comments.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so this concludes the public review session for May 11th, 2 p.m. We will now commence with the public hearing for May 11th, 2021, 2 p.m. session. The first item up is a case that was recalled from yesterday, 2018-178A, 2 Oak Tree Way, Staten Island. Text focus.
Yeah, he's not here. Yeah, there he is. He's on.
Oh, he's there? Okay. Sorry. Mr. Impula, when you're ready,
I'm ready.
go ahead.
I watched the review session and I will submit a amended set of plans that show a revision date, so there's no confusion.
Great.
I think that was the only item.
That was the only item on the plans. We're still waiting for that restrictive declaration. So the issue was, you called it the fire department restrictive deck, but it's actually the BSA restrictive deck. We always require these on these waivers. So it has to do with the cross easement and maintenance of the shared roadway. And you know what you might want to do, I don't know, is give one to us. And if fire department hasn't finished reviewing it, perhaps their own, perhaps we could have ours. And then you complete yours with the fire department, and that would be a condition. But the idea is, I think we're both asking for the same thing.
Okay,
So it'd be kind of silly to have 2 restrictive declarations that say the same thing recorded against a property that's like 2 clouds instead of 1.
understood.
Okay.
Understood. It's not ready yet. I will get a draft of it and send it to council and to FDNY also.
Okay.
I don't have a contact person for FDNY council, so I'm going to rely on the
John
FDNY
Daly, yeah. Well,
rep.
this is no, I will send it to John Daly, but we can also copy, I think it's Julian Basil.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure what Julian's role is anymore. He has been general counsel. I don't know if he still is or is now or whatever. But we'll forward it to
John.
John.
That's fine.
Okay, so I don't know, commissioners, any comments, questions? Let's go. Yeah, go ahead.
The DEP thing?
Yeah, so, but those are comments that you heard. We still
Okay, fine.
have an open DEP. We need a sign off from DEP, but the reason I was going to the public is because I didn't have a problem with Mr. Rampula's request to at least close, as long as we're okay, because these are not seeker questions.
Yeah, no.
That we could close and then give you enough time to finish your perk test, which is soon.
Yeah.
And finish up with this restrictive deck, and then by then we could vote, right? So then we don't have yet another hearing to set for a closing, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to the public.
Okay, so you're calling in for this case, which is 2018-178A, 2 Oak Tree Way, Staten Island. The call-in number is 646-558-8656. The Zoom webinar ID number is 941-1784-0542. The passcode, should you require it, is 477426. And once you are in, you're calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If you're in the Zoom room already, just press *9 to raise your Zoom hand.
Okay, so there are a bunch of people in the waiting room, but not clear that they're here for this case. If you're in the waiting room and you want to speak on this case, Oak Tree Avenue in Staten Island, please raise your Zoom hand. Otherwise, Mr. Rampula, how much time do you think you need to finish this up?
We've been pushed back to the second week of June for the perk test, and then it has to be processed. So we're looking at sometime in the summer, in July or August.
Okay, so for finishing up, in other words.
Yes, for getting the DEP perk test and the DEP endorsement that there are no sanitary or storm sewers fronting the property for both.
Okay, so our last hearing is July
22nd,
23rd, right? You think that's enough?
Except I'll be away. Can we push it out to August?
No
There's
August.
a hearing in August. The first will be the second week of September.
Let's go with the 22nd.
So July 22nd, and you don't necessarily have to be present, right? You could have someone stand in for a vote.
After all this, I'd like to be present.
Okay, well, you can also from whatever place,
Wherever I am.
whatever time of day or night it is. Okay. Okay, so then so that's fine. I'd like to make a motion to close then.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for
And,
adjusting.
and thanks for the consideration from yesterday. It takes one woman to raise 4 kids. It takes 4 kids to take care of one woman. It was a good day. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Okay, the next item is zoning calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 25, 2019-91 BZ, 9709 24th Avenue, Queens.
Oh, we have a 516, 516 area code calling in. If that is the applicant, please raise your Zoom hand by pressing *9. Mr. Sangha.
Hi, that's actually me. Sorry.
Please turn off your YouTube.
You have to turn off your YouTube. And which case are you speaking about? I don't think this. You have to turn off your YouTube. Terrible feedback. Oh, you're one of the owners. That's right. Yeah.
You're using both his phone and the
Zoom.
Could be phone and yeah, it could be. So you have to turn off one of those voice. I don't think so. It's just his. It's just his Zoom.
There's Mr. Sangha.
Oh, you see him?
Yeah, Mishio Sangha. Mr. Sangha, do you want to unmute, present yourself?
Mr. Sangha, can you hear us? Please unmute. There you go. Your hand is up. You just need to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
Click that little unmute button on the lower left-hand corner.
Good, okay. Where is he? Okay. Let me swear, is anyone else coming with you, Mr. Shanga? That's it? Sangha?
Yes, owner, Mr. Omar Chowdhury.
Okay,
Mhm.
he's in the room. Okay, let me swear you in, sir. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Chowdhury?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please proceed. State your name for the record, Mr. Sangha, and proceed.
My name is Michio Sangha, applicant for owner Umar Chowdhury.
Okay.
You heard the board's comments?
Yes, I watched the review session, and and number one, the spray, the zoning resolution section 23-142A states that in R3 district, the floor area ratio in the may be increased by up to 20%, provided that any such increase in floor area is located directly under the sloping roof, which lies at least 3.5 inches foot for horizontal distance, and the structural headroom of such floor area is between 5 and 8 feet. So when you look at proposed plans, building section AA, or the spray plan sheet A-401, you can see the sloping ceiling between 8 feet and 7 foot 6 and 3/4. Those are the spray area, about 1.3 feet or so from exterior of the wall to that 8 feet ceiling, the point where 8 foot flat ceiling starts. So that's the floor area increase permitted in this situation. That's my understanding.
So that's our question really had to do with you may have done a lot of these houses before, right? And in, let's say,
Yes.
recent years, recently with DOB, our question was, does DOB allow it to be under a splay when that's when the floor itself has a ceiling, right? You're at the second floor, and
Right.
there's the ceiling, and then the splay is actually above the attic, right? So the question is,
No. Spray is not an attic because this is the cathedral ceiling. That
oh.
Yes, this is the
Okay, it's a cathedral ceiling.
right.
Okay, all right, under this living room, so it's a cathedral ceiling. Okay. So maybe we weren't aware of that, right, Commissioner Shanda? Okay, as long as you're comfortable that you won't be tossed back here, we're okay with this.
I am confident. Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Good, okay.
Item number 2, you mentioned about.
No, wait, with the next one, I'm sorry. You had more on this case, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The planting requirement.
Yeah.
The plan proposed at February hearing, there was no the variance required for planting. In that plot plan, we had 27% planting area. That's over 25% required. So since we changed the plot plan, now it's the planting is waiver required. So that's the story.
Okay, but so did you get an additional waiver? I mean, an additional objection from DOB on that planting requirement?
No, this time I didn't bother to check with the DOB. I didn't know that. Do we have to do that?
Yeah, so the way that the board works is we're only given the authority to give a variance if we have an objection from DOB for that section of the zoning resolution. Sometimes you're getting an objection for a section of the zoning resolution that covers many things, so then it's
Yeah.
not enough. But if it's a new section in the zoning resolution, you do need to go to DOB to get an objection as to that section.
Well, but these days the DOB is very slow because of the remote working, and I'm not sure how soon I can get that objection letter.
Okay, well, we might be able to facilitate this so it goes a little faster, because that's all we need, right? I don't think we could waive this unless we have in our record the DOB objection as to that question. So wait a second. So the landscape requirement is 23,451. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, was that question directed towards me?
Yeah, well, or whoever wants to answer it.
Okay, yeah, the planting requirement is 23,451. But one of the objection is proposed front yard is contrary to ZR 2345, which is the catch-all. So I'm wondering if that catch-all would also cover it. It would be worth getting that clarification, and if that's what it is, then we may not even need to modify the objection, but maybe a call from our office to DOB can help expedite that clarification.
Well, 45 is 45, right? 451 goes under 45, arguably.
That's
also how we
I
generally treat the use waivers as well.
Say that again?
That's generally how we treat the use waivers as well,
okay. So
in terms of citing just 2200. So.
Okay. Then that covers it. Council, would that cover it based on that same reading?
I believe so, since it's basically a subsection, but we can confirm.
Okay, so let's look at it, do it this way. We'll try to confirm with DOB, but we can also make clear in our resolution that we're reading 2345 as a request to cover the following objection, like those issues. And then we specifically state the waiver under 2345.
Yeah.
So, okay, so our council, whoever's writing this resolution, keep that in mind, okay? So that we don't have to go back for yet another objection. Okay, that's a solution. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, about that. Okay. So thank you, Sangha. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have no more further comments. Thank you.
Great. So let's go to the public.
So the application we are currently discussing is 2019-91BZ 9709 24th Avenue, Queens. Should you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. The Zoom webinar ID number is 941-1784-0542. The passcode is 477426. If you wish to speak, it is *6 to unmute, *9 to raise your hand. And if you are in the Zoom room already, this case is 2019-91BZ, so raise your Zoom hand. Press *9.
Okay. So I don't think, right, we had any corrections to the drawings that were needed. Right? Okay.
So you're gonna close?
Yes, but I just want to give a teeny bit of time because of our very long delay from YouTube. Okay.
And
So-
also, I just wanted to point out that section 1201 J specifically states that references within a section or cross references to a section numbered with 4 digits shall include all following sections with numbers whose first 4 digits are identical with such section number.
Okay. We've got the 4-digit rule, all sections. Okay.
Thank you, Council.
Leave it to Mr. Steinhaus, our general counsel, for finding the legal justification. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much for putting first 4 digits. Okay. All right. So that was very helpful. Thank you. So then I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Shepherd,
Aye.
Commissioner Shibeta.
All right.
Okay. So this is closed and we'll put it on for decision, hopefully May 24th, assuming we're able to handle those things because there's no submission. So we just don't decide on the same date. I just need permission from my council to close on May 24th. Okay, which they'll let me know in a little bit. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good luck to you, Mr. Chowdhury, on this project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item number, stay on, Mr. Shanga. Item number 2019-92BZ, 2339 98th Street, Queens. Okay, let me swear you in for this, Mr. Sangha. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please proceed.
The spray is the same as the previous project, so I have no further comments. Thank you.
Okay. And so for future use, well, anyway, it's okay. I think we covered the issue of the intervening foreclosure action. So yeah. So I think that we referenced that case. This is for the benefit of our council. We referenced
12714BZ.
yeah, so if we could make sure a copy of that is included in our record, and that would just complete the record as reference.
Okay.
Vote to council. Okay, thank you, our council. Okay, so then let's go to the public.
The case we are currently discussing is 2019-92BZ, 23-39 98th Street, Queens. Should you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. Webinar ID number is 941-1784-0542, and the passcode is 477426. And would you want to call in? It is *6 to unmute, *9 to raise your hand. If you are in the Zoom room already, please raise your Zoom hand or press *9.
Okay. Let's just give it like 30 seconds. Time delay. Someday there won't be a time delay, I guess. And also there's no submission on this one. I actually have my little timer on, so. Okay, so then I would like to make a motion, seeing nobody calling in. I'd like to make a motion to close this, and there's no submission, so we'll put it on for May 24th decision, okay? So motion to close.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Madam Chair, I think Mr. Sangha has his hands up.
Well, he had his hand up before. That was how he
Okay.
got sworn in.
Oh, okay, okay. Yes.
Okay,
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Shepherd,
Aye.
Commissioner Shibeta.
All right.
Okay, this case is closed.
it's true that Mr. Sangha had his hand up, but really, we're done with the case. Thank you.
Thank you for the vote. Have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck to Mr. Chowdhury as well. Okay. All right. On this one, I think because this might be long, we should take a 10-minute break now, which is just 10 minutes before our usual break. So a 10-minute break, coming back at 4. And then we'll start on this last case of the day, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have everybody, we can start whenever.
Ready? Ready?
Mhm.
Okay. Board of, are we ready? Oh, is this live?
Yes, no,
Oh, okay. No, it's not live yet.
it's live.
It's live, sorry. I'm not even looking up. Sorry. It's the Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing, May 11th, 2021, 2 p.m. session. We're resuming, and the next case is new cases, item number 27, 2020-84BZ, 161 Emerson Place, Brooklyn.
Good afternoon. I'm Caroline Harris, partner at Goldman Harris, and we represent the applicant, ICL.
We have to swear everybody in. Caroline, how are you?
Okay, all of us, I'm fine. How are you, Tony?
Is everyone here?
I believe
Is everyone, oh, your team is here?
I only see me and David and me, but I
Is John
believe your whole team is
Wolfling?
there.
I'm here. Nick is here and Joe Bieber is here. I think we're ready to go.
We're good to swear in.
Great.
Mr. Beaver is here? I don't see.
He is. Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Just, I see you in the corner. Thank you. Okay, gotta swear you in. Everybody unmute and raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Yes.
Okay,
I do.
please state your name for the record and proceed, whoever is gonna start.
Hi, I'm Caroline Harris. You'll know me as Carrie. And I partner at Goldman Harris. We represent the applicant ICL. And I want to thank the commissioners and the staff, especially Jella Pringa, for your very thorough review of our papers and the support you're giving us going forward. We did, of course, listen to review session just a few minutes ago and want to confirm that the application is for a variance for floor area density and height. The special permit under zoning resolution 73-623 is for bulk waivers for quality housing buildings on irregular sites in which more than 50% of units are income restricted. We have received unanimous community board support, and we also have the support of the Myrtle Avenue Brooklyn Partnership, the Society for Clinton Hill. There are people from the community who we believe have signed up to testify, who you'll hear from after our presentation. And what I'd like to do is just simply introduce the rest of my team and turn it over to this terrific team to primarily focus on the questions that you asked in the review session. What we can't answer, or even some of the questions we do answer live, we will follow up in our written materials with confirmation of whatever is said live here, or what we don't answer, we will fill in our written submissions. So the other members of our team who will be testifying today are David Schnackenberg, counsel to Goldman Harris, who will describe the project in some greater detail and the requested relief, and ultimately will be fielding questions from the board. Nick Ori, who's the vice president and CFO of ICL, will describe ICL's program and the need for the requested relief, and answering some of the questions that were asked during review session regarding the outdoor space, the program space, and how the two programs, the two populations interact with each other. John Wolfling from Datner Architects will describe the proposed development and the requested waivers, and also will be clearly answering, some of the questions raised again today by the commissioners regarding whether it's possible to keep the existing building rather than tearing down and rebuilding. So without more, I'll turn this over to David.
Everybody. just want to echo Carrie. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Jella, for great work on the application and great questions. I also want to just acknowledge Commissioner Otley Brown. I do apologize. We did not get you the right backup for the March submission, and you were looking at, believe the backup for our October submission. We appreciate your trying. I know you were going through those and multitasking today during a very difficult hearing. So I'm sorry for that. We will formally submit the March backup as soon as the hearing's over with any additional material. And we really appreciate your trying and Jella trying to work through that. It sounds like everyone's, we've got a hot bench. Everyone's pretty familiar with the project, so I won't get into it too much. Just to remind everybody, this is we're here for a substantial variance. It's a 5.9 FAR, but we're building 80 units of affordable housing. Just a little bit of table setting. In our papers, we refer to supportive housing, which are the units that are part of the Emerson Davis program, and affordable housing. But to be absolutely clear, every unit is going to be affordable under the standards that were set forth in the Catholic Charities case that expanded the Cornell deference. Also, just to back it up a little bit, and to reiterate, the waivers we're seeking for under the special permit are just the setback and the yard regulations. We sort of we tiered past the height that we could get out of the special permit, as the chair mentioned. You don't need to hear from me.
Mr. Schnackenberg, it doesn't work for height either. I mean, for setback either, because you don't have a setback at all, right? You're rising after the initial setback. You're rising without setback, right? So I don't think the required, I think it's 10-foot setback, unless you do. So
no, we do not.
That has to occur at the 65-foot height, and it doesn't. So it doesn't work for setbacks either. It's not a very useful special permit, I'm sorry to report.
I remember the drafting of the special permit. So the special permit we are seeking to sort of lessen the variance, however slightly, we'll apply for the yard waiver under the special permit, which I believe we are obligated to do. So we've established that the supportive units are also affordable units. And now I'd just like to introduce Nick, who's going to talk a little bit more about ICL, a lot more about the Emerson Davis program and about the existing building.
Thanks, David. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Again, thank you again for allowing us to make this presentation. I want to first give just a few minutes on ICL. We're actually going to be celebrating 35 years of existence this year. Back in 1986, we started ICL almost as a grassroots organization with one residential building. And over the 35 years, we've expanded from that one building, serving about 150 clients, to serving greater than 2,500 clients at this point in time, and also creating 23 residential developments of affordable housing. So, really taking on the ownership and the responsibility that really resides with a not-for-profit like ICL to provide social services for the most vulnerable population. We have clients that are there because of their mental illness or substance abuse or a various other services that they need across New York City. We're in all 5 boroughs, but majority of our work is in Brooklyn. So we are very familiar with the communities of Brooklyn and the needs that are there. Excuse me. With that experience that we've developed, that really allowed us to kind of determine where is our greatest need. And taking our experience over that 35 years, working with people like Carrie and David from a land use perspective, working with Joe from a development, I think we've made some strides to really continue to build on the affordable housing model. So with that, we looked at this Emerson Davis program, which actually resides at 161 Emerson, the physical building that we're talking about. And, ICL is probably proudest about this one program because it is the most unique and special program that we believe exists in New York. It is the only family unification program in the state. So the goal of this program is to take usually formerly homeless or people with substance abuse or people with a mental illness that have lost their kids. Majority of the residents are actually women, but it is open to both men and women. And the goal of the program is to reunify and to bring the family model back together. And the biggest issue that many people who've lost their kids have is stability in housing. And that's what this Emerson Davis program really creates, is that stability. It provides not just the residences for that, but then the stability of care as well. We have on-site services for the building that provides a numerous amount of services, everything from budgeting skills to dealing with kids to cooking to learning about a trade or a vocational service, because we just don't want the person to just have their kids back, but they want their life back. And I think that's a critical component to this Emerson Davis program that we do. And the program, the model, was built based off the building. When we first built the building back in the 90s, or when it was redeveloped and took it over, we kind of took advantage of the space. So a lot of the building space itself is very small. But as soon as you start adding kids in, that smaller units become very inefficient and also becomes a detriment to the care. So that's one of the things we were looking at. If you were to walk the building right now, we've got this small is the understatement of where the kids can play, and it's in the basement. While it works because we've got great staff working with the kids and the parents, that was one of the key things we wanted to kind of look into, and that community space, to see how do we take advantage of the services that are working and how do we do more of it and to make it more efficient. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Another point that I want to make out is of why we're so proud of this program is just the success rate. The national average for reunification for people with mental illness or substance abuse hovers in the 30th percentile. Our percentage is at 72%. So we know we do this well, and we want to continue to do this well. So that's when we started thinking and then worked with John at Dotner to say, what can we do and what can we do with this building? And that's when we came up with John walking the building and saying and talking to the program directors, talking to the various staff that actually work at Emerson, and said, if you could have the world, what would you want? And really having that conversation about the services that we currently deliver and what could be better. What are the services that the parents really need that we have struggled delivering? And then what are the access points that are necessary to make this an even better program? So we took all of that, and that's where John and his team really put together, I think, an amazing building and all of the spaces that are in there. And then I won't take John's commentary, so I'll leave the details with him. But I think that was the process we went through to acknowledge all of that. I know some of the questions that were raised was the actual space itself on the first floor, as well as the access to the roof. So I'd like to address those two very specifically, and then obviously we'll put into the details as David mentioned. As for the space itself, the key component and why we think this program can even be more successful is what the word is: integration with the community. Because of the fact that this is going to be a 60-40 split, 60% supported housing, or that population that's currently there, and 40% community-based affordable housing. One of the things that we've learned, working with mental illness, is that you can't isolate people. You can't create an institutional style facility. You want to integrate with the community. And that's what this program is going to do. It's going to bring both people from the community and the people with these diagnoses and the issues that we're trying to help them with, and bring them together to normalize this and to really make it even more successful. So with that being said, the space is going to be used by everybody. And because the sheer volume is going to get bigger than we currently have, and we believe that the utilization space is also very small, we wanted to build that test kitchen that you see. We wanted to build that tenant space that allows for a potential, and this is reality, I'm giving an example, an ACS worker to come in and to supervise the coordination of services between the child and the mother or the father. Having that space, having the ability to not worry about coordination or to find a space because we need that right now, becomes a critical component to that. A comment was also made about the outdoor space. Why not just use the park on the outside? Well, you're right, we could, but in order to really make this program successful is safety. Really acknowledging that the parents that are coming in that may have a substance abuse issue, were previously homeless for an extended period of time, don't have all of the community skills yet. And I think creating that private space and bringing them together, coming with a case manager, I think really allows for that successful learning, is the best word to use. And I think that really helps the program to grow. Currently, we do actually have a side yard. It's a little bit bigger than what is going to be built in the current drawings, but that's what it's used for. It's used for barbecues, but it's meant to allow people to really just focus on what their needs are. We also have a lot of community events for the community that allows for other people to come in and allow to use it when we need to do the integration. So it really is a multifaceted space in that manner. And I know one of the other comments that were made was on the rooftop. ICL, like I said, we have 23 different residences, and they're all affordable, and many of them are serving people with a mental illness. And we made it a policy in conjunction with the Office of Mental Health to actually not use the rooftop as an accessible space. Again, it goes back to safety. We don't want to create a separation of just letting affordable housing side, that 40% go up to the roof, because again, it eliminates the integration thought process. So it really comes down to safety. There are issues and concerns, and the management of that is very critical. So we take that very conservative and appropriate approach, and we've got support from the Office of Mental Health as well as other funding sources that that's the right thing to do. So I think that kind of eliminates that opportunity, and I do believe it is an opportunity, but unfortunately in this population and the services that we provide, it just doesn't work for that. So that's why I'll take a step. Yes.
Because you're going so fast. Over
Yeah,
so
I
many
apologize. Yeah, please slow me down if you need to.
in the questions, because I didn't write down what the answers were, so I'm going to go back up. I remember most recently, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to skip 2 back. You said something about involving the entire community in the services. What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the key drivers of success is not to create social isolation or to create an institutional feel. So in other words, we don't want people with just mental illness, in that one residence. So when you've got community members there and you've got other people that don't have a mental illness, but again, still qualify under the, the AMI and everything else, when they're in that building, there's friendships developed. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Wait, because the word community means many different things, and in your business, you mean a slightly different thing than in our business, right?
Yes.
So when you say community, you're just talking about the residents of the building?
Correct.
That's correct, yes.
The reason, and I know Mr. Schnackenberg is picking up on where I'm going, and I think Ms. Harris is as well. This building and the services are for the residents of the building. It's not to provide support to the general outdoor population who walks in off the street with an appointment, okay? Has to be clear. That's what this special type of variance is available for, okay? And we can't expand it beyond that, okay? That's the first thing I want to make super clear. All right. So then the next question is, I understand the issue about safety on a setback terrace, but for example, very able architecture firm and we, board and appeals who have the authority to waive nearly everything, why isn't there some solution to use the roof in a way that makes it safe? And so I'm, other than sort of the obvious fear of someone jumping over off the edge, I can't actually think of what it would be, because even the backyard has an issue of integration, which is what you said you wanted, right? So, for example, there are beautiful rooftops all over the world with very high walls, just to use as an example, not just a little parapet wall, but a very high wall. There's a famous artist who works with this idea of the wall and all you see is sky, right? So why preclude? I mean, this is a setback building. The building is designed with setbacks. So the idea of not being able to use them at all seems both bad for the residents and bad for the community, the outside community.
I can answer that if it's appropriate for me to jump in. If we were to do tall walls, which, that could be, that is one idea. If those walls get above a certain height, then the area that's enclosed starts to count as zoning floor area. So that would be one issue that would come up, at least with that particular solution. I think another idea that, and this is maybe not a great idea or even a good idea, but to provide some sort of enclosure or something that would keep people from doing something that we want to all avoid, would also, I think, really, I've been in those spaces and they are really, really institutional and really fight against what we are trying to achieve here, which is really a residential building, which I'll get into in a much more detail at an appropriate time.
So the first one is, we're the floor area specialists. If you're creating floor area, we can waive it, right? But the other thing is, it seems to me that there are so many different versions of some wonderful kind of screening that doesn't look institutional as a way to get access to the roof. I just wish that would be explored more. I do understand those fears, but architecture and the history of architecture has gone very far to create amazing solutions for that. Vice Chair Shonda has her hand up. Go ahead.
I don't know, my old HPD hat comes in. I think it would be the cost.
Maybe.
Yeah, if it starts to
Maybe.
become a
Not
place
maybe.
of assembly, it's,
Unfortunately, not maybe. I would say from some of the projects that we had to value engineer, this would be one of the first. But if something can be done in a much more integrated way, I think from a financing point of view, it might be. But that's for you to answer. But that's just my first.
Right.
My first knee-jerk reaction to that was, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yeah, this is something that we'll brief the board in full in our response.
Yeah.
We'll have to take a really hard look, and we'll consider it. And I know that it was one of the initial considerations. I mean, this was examined, but we'll sharpen pencils and really take a hard look and respond back to the board.
Because the other thing is, then it's true that my comment about the second floor and the rendering is that it's just a pretty picture. It's just a pretty picture, because you are not going to have access to the second floor setback, which is a shame, and more than a shame.
well,
Right?
I will admit it's a pretty picture, and thank you for the, I guess maybe the backhanded compliment or whatever it is. But it's intended to be a planted roof. It's actually one of the local law requirements that's currently in place. That's that you need to have either a green roof or PVs. It's a little too shallow to really be usable as an outdoor space, that second floor setback. So that's, maybe it's, I think it being a planted roof will be a nice amenity for those apartments that look out onto it, but it's not big enough to really be a real usable space.
Right, but how are you going to have a planted roof and no one has access? How's that going to work?
How do you mean? I mean, it's an extensive planted roof that doesn't need maintenance. It just.
Really? Have you been on a planted roof that's been ignored for many years?
There's a project that we did in Brooklyn, Prospect Plaza. It's at a NYCHA site, and it's an extensive planted roof, and it's a low maintenance roof. You do need to get out there. And what's that?
You need to get out there is the point.
Yeah.
There will be limited access for
maintenance and operation. Yeah.
Putting us back on track to Nick.
So going back to the actual amenity space, so I think we talked about that, and that was the needs behind it. Talking also about the space of the apartments themselves. I know one of the questions were coming about the size, and I know John will talk about it in greater detail, but from a programmatic perspective, as families are starting to get reunified, as they're starting to actually grow, when this program first originally started, typically it was one parent and one child. And we were actually expanding that quite a bit now, where there's multiple kids, and actually we're getting reunification from both sides of the parents as well. So unfortunately, the size of the apartments became a critical component to the success of the program. Now the studio units, majority of those will be going to the affordable side, so on the community, in my terms, community. But the majority of the 1 bedroom, the 2 bedrooms are going to be focused on the clients that we will be serving on that 60% supported housing side. So that becomes a critical piece, because again, having the size and having the separation of the bedrooms for the multiple kids and the parent becomes, again, a critical component for the success of the individual learning how to parent, understanding barriers, and understanding the things that will happen in a normal life. So that becomes a critical component to that as well.
So just a question. So has the one bedroom fit into that scenario? I certainly understand 2 bedrooms, but how does 1 bedroom?
Because we have a combination of families, like there are families that are bigger, but we do have some families where there is just one child.
Yeah, actually, Nick, let me just interrupt you for a second. The units on the supportive side are going to be 10 studios and all 38 2 bedrooms, all the 1 bedrooms, and as Nick said, the majority of the studios are going to go to the so-called affordable community units.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Joe, for that clarification.
Oh, so slow down. You talk really fast. Slow down. So to be clear, please clarify this. The 2 bedrooms are for the supportive family situation, and the 1s and 0s are for the general low-income housing population, right?
10 of the studios will be for the supportive units. The other 23 will be for the community affordable side. All 8 1 bedrooms will be for the low income community side, and all 38 2 bedrooms will be for the supportive residents for the reunification program.
What is the need for the 10 studios to be part of?
Well, I mean, some of the women come in before, right, Nick? I mean,
yeah, at the end of the day, it's the same concept as the studios or the 1 bedrooms, where when we do have a new resident that was just entered into the program itself, a lot of times they've not been unified or reunified with their kids. So a studio works. So it's sort of like that concept of learning the skills and developing, and eventually getting to that 2-bedroom apartment itself. So that's why the number is very small. Majority of our cases are with the 2 bedrooms and having multiple kids.
Okay.
Is there a maximum amount of time that the families can stay in the 2 bedrooms before they have to move on?
There's no set time. We've built that program that way so that it is I'll use the word permanent housing because it's really meant to be in that format. What we do end up seeing is that eventually, and the length of time is extremely long. I'll just be honest with you on that because it's meant to be a permanent kind of setting. We do want to get to a point where there is a level of independence that they don't need our subsidy anymore. They don't need our help. And that's the goal, to eventually then move out of that building when they get to that point where they are truly independent and could be on their own. They have a full-time job, et cetera, and the subsidies and the extra services that we provide, is no longer necessary. That's really the goal.
I would just add, Nick, that they all have the right to remain. They'll have rent-stabilized leases, a right to renew. But as Nick said, it's a programmatic goal that over time they move on into a more independent setting in the community. But they could stay there as long as they wish. They have the right to remain.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering then how people who are in the studios would ever get to a position where they could have their children with them and move into a 2-bedroom if there's no set time frame through which the people who are currently occupying it have to move out.
That is a constant struggle. We do also have some apartments that are in the community. So that's usually how the situation works, is that we have other supported housing beds in other contracts, the best way to describe it, that they'll eventually just move into what's called a scattered site or into the community itself. You're right, Dara, that is absolutely one of the biggest struggles that we have, is that as the growth occurs, if there isn't that next level of independence, it does become difficult. It's one of the programmatic struggles we have every day.
It's not considered transitional housing as to those 0 bedrooms, the studios?
No, they're permanent.
Okay.
Yep. I think it's just from the programmatic perspective, things change, life events change. So people can make decisions to move on. And I think that's an independent choice, not a forceful transition, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Okay.
I think I have hit on majority of my points in terms of the program itself and the needs and why we want and have set up the building the way we have. David, please confirm if I've hit everything, and then I think I can move it on to John.
Yeah, I think, John, if the board will permit us, I think John's going to walk through the proposed development and pay a little bit of extra attention to the accessory space, because that was certainly something that came up a lot during the executive review session. And then when John's done, I'd like to go through some of the questions that were asked, make sure we're checking off all the boxes, and then sort of prepare our list of what will be in our next response. So if, and
Share screen, you feel free, Mr. Wolfling, to do that.
Okay, did I get the right screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I don't know if I have to formally introduce myself. John Wolfling, principal at Datner Architects. I'm actually, as an architect, we aren't supposed to have favorite buildings or favorite clients, but I have to say that this project is one of my favorites. I think because of the social aspect of it. I mean, it's the sort of thing, whenever you see one of these like terrible, news stories, I look at this project as how I can make a difference and how I can be changing some of those outcomes, maybe for a very small part of our society, but it's a project that's very near and dear to my heart. So with that, let me just scroll through this. Is this large enough for everyone to see?
Yes.
Okay, so this was Nick's slide. So the project site, it's in obviously Brooklyn. It's on the edge of Clinton Hill, kind of nestled within the Pratt campus. There's a couple buildings that are proximate to the site that are in the Pratt campus. We've presented to Pratt, and they've been very supportive of our project. This is the project site on Emerson. Willoughby is just to the south. Emerson is here, and you can see the neighborhood is a real combination of height factor, kind of towers in the park buildings, and contextual zoning, and a real combination of not only typologies but heights and a real variety. There's also been a tremendous amount of development that's happened on Myrtle Avenue just to the north. Some very large buildings. This is a new building here. So the context is really interesting. Just to the east of us is a church that I believe I know there is a development that's going on there. We won't dwell on that too much right now. The current district is an R6 district, surrounded by other contextual and non-contextual districts. On the left-hand side, you see some of the zoning regulations that dictate an as-of-right development. And one of the things that really jumps out at you on this left-hand image of the site plan is the unique dimensions of the site. It's 52 feet wide at the south end along Willoughby, and about 45 at the north end. So it tapers. Thankfully, we don't have much topography to deal with here, but it is a really unique, shallow and long site. So this is our proposed design, which you've seen some of this imagery already. It's for 80 units. And Nick mentioned and Joe mentioned kind of the mix of those 80 units. It's partially supportive, but primarily supportive, but also the neighborhood affordable. As Commissioner Chanda has pointed out, the units will meet the current Hpd Design Guidelines. That's a really important metric for us to be hitting. The units will be accessible in compliance with the American Disabilities Act, which is another really important part of our review and design standards. And as Nick mentioned earlier, it really is an integrated model. It is intended to be a residential building. It has residential amenities that you would see in a contemporary, typical building. So for anyone that lives in this building, there really should be no distinction between whether someone is there and receiving supportive services, or they've been fortunate enough to be able to have an affordable apartment in New York City. So I'll get into some of the details in a little bit, but the amenities include a bike room. I'm going to zoom in on this because it's very small. But in the cellar, we have bike storage, which is it's a standard required item for residential buildings. Tenant workspace, computer lab, fitness room, laundry. All of these things are pretty standard amenities for residential buildings. This is in the cellar, so it doesn't even count as ZFA. The ground floor uses that we do have, This graphic that we use, where it's partially purple, partially blue, really means it's a blended program where it is partially residential and partially for the supportive program. So this activity room that you see here is for every one of the residents. So is the tenant lounge. So is the tenant kitchen. This is the teaching kitchen that Nick mentioned earlier. The family services and office space, that's dedicated to the supportive and reunification program. These offices over here for the caseworkers, for meeting rooms. This is intended specifically for that supportive program. So on balance, it's actually not that much of the space that's dedicated to this program. The balance of the spaces that are both supportive and affordable roughly equal about 2,000 square feet. And if you do the math on the quality housing program, the 3.3% of the zoning square footage, it's about 2,000 square feet. And that's so we have basically a quality housing recreation requirement of 3.3%, and that's basically what we're hitting here with these amenity spaces. The balance of sure.
Before you go on, because slow down. So
sure.
Now you're beginning to talk about, unless you were planning to come back to it later, is critical to making the findings under this special type of a variance. Okay. So the first thing is, you were talking about the percentage of space that's required under quality housing for the residents of a quality housing building, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to show in a diagram how much of this floor space we're looking at, and we talk about floor area, not floor space. How much of the floor space that we're talking about satisfies the quality housing requirement for public spaces, all that stuff, trash rooms, laundry rooms, right? Then articulate which is specifically related to the program, right? To the special needs program, okay? The other part of it, we need, I don't know whether you can provide it or whether whether your client needs to provide it. How does, for instance, this is a significant portion of the building is for the general, as we say, general community population, right? Why do they need a teaching kitchen or whatever it says there?
It's a teaching. It's the tenant kitchen, but yeah, it's a teaching kitchen. It's a vocational training space.
Right. So how does that relate? How do you say that that's related to the general occupancy of just a regular building? It doesn't really sound like one, right? Unless you're talking about a community room where there's a kitchen in the community room where everyone gets to have sort of their, the birthday parties go on in the community room, and therefore there's a kitchen. That's not what that's looking like. That's one of my questions. And I'm not saying you need to answer these questions now. These are questions.
Okay. We can certainly do a chart. A chart is relatively easy to do.
Okay, so both a chart, and then you're going to need a graphic depiction of what's what, right? And how many square feet in each of the what. And then the other part of it is, if there is anything that's devoted to this particular services, and because I'm always concerned about the children who are part of this really at-risk population. The kids have been, I'm guessing just by the profile, the kids have maybe been living in foster homes or in shelters or who knows what. And so they're vulnerable just emotionally. What's to protect them when they're participating in the programs that are shown on the first and cellar floors? What's to protect them from just a person who wins the lottery and gets one of those apartments? The lottery of the outside, regular.
The community-based units, yeah.
Right. So because right now I see no distinction between that, so that basically anyone who passes the security desk presumably is either a resident or a guest of a resident. And once you're past that, it looks like you can go anywhere you want into any of those spaces. If that's not the intent, then I'm not sure I'm getting the layout, which I understand is probably pretty schematic at this point. And by the way, if you have more developed drawings where you've taken this thought further, provide those so that we don't have to work on these schematics you might have prepared a year ago or something like that?
They were
Okay.
relatively recent, but understood.
If I can
Yeah.
jump in with sort of a partial response, Madam Chair, I actually had the same question. We generally think of protecting children by segregating them from the general population. But what's interesting about this model is that integrating the children into the sort of community of the building is actually a really important part of the ICL model. So there's a little bit more fluidity than I think I expected. I expected segregated spaces sort of being kind of ignorant about how this stuff works. But what I've learned is that the integrating the Emerson Davis families with those people who are fortunate enough to win the lottery and get the affordable units is actually part of the model of care and rehabilitation. That doesn't mean that there will be sort of unsupervised, unsafe children, right? It's, as in any building, you wouldn't let your children sort of run around a lobby unsupervised. But the integration is actually part of the solution here. It's not about segregating the children from everyone else. It's about building a community within the building. So we'll respond with a chart, of course, but
so if somebody has kids who are in the 1 bedrooms, for argument's sake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those kids can or cannot participate in the whatever it is. I don't know which one, the activity room or the family services room.
The intention is for all building residents to be able to participate in the activities that are going on in the activity room or the tenants room. But nothing is sort of left on, so yes, if there's a movie night, all building residents can attend the movie night and sort of be there together.
Okay,
yeah.
So if you get into more detail, Mr. Ori or
Yeah, I mean, let me add one more point, and then I think we can probably do a formal response that might be helpful. One of the things that we've learned as we've been developing, supported housing, mixed-use housing, is that even though we create that case management space and this space for the supported units, it's really accessible to the whole building. The building that we're building in downtown Brooklyn right now on 50 Nevins, that's how we've structured it, where the case managers that are going to be there, now they're made for the supportive housing units, but if somebody in the affordable unit said, I've got a problem or I need help with something, we're going to be more than amenable to provide support to them. I think that's just being good neighbors and creating that community atmosphere in that building. You are right, in that family services office, that one space, that really is made for just the supportive housing. That probably more often than not is going to be used for visits by kids. So, an ACS brings the child and, has a supervised meeting with the parent. Meeting is not the right word. I'm losing what the word is, but I think you know what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. But everything else is really meant for that community integration. That activity room, hopefully there'll be game nights. Hopefully there'll be movie nights. That tenant kitchen, we're absolutely going to have workshops for teaching, cooking and things like that. And it's going to be accessible to everybody, even though the case managers in that supported housing who are going to be doing it, but really it's going to be open to everybody. So really it's that family feel, that integrated feel that we're really going for. And yes, it's not always black and white, but I think that we're not trying to create that black and white concept because that will not make a successful program. So I'll stop there and we'll give very specifics on the documentation.
Okay, and before Mr. Wolfling continues, Vice Chair Shanda has her hand up. Go ahead. You're muted. You're muted.
Muted, Commissioner.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Mr. Ori just answered my question in terms of similar program that they have in other of the ICL facilities where every supportive space is shared by all the residents, and if you could just put that in the narrative, could help us kind of explain how the program works and how this space, that would be helpful also.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, I will continue. Okay. Next page is these are our typical floors. And yes, this is that planted second floor area that really is, relatively narrow. So we can add some color to this if that's helpful. But the individual units are laid out here. These are compliant with the Hpd Design Guidelines. You can see these kind of rectangles. Those are handicap clearances. And we did actually spend a lot of time looking at the existing building, which I'm not going to get into a full response on that right now, but we compared the existing units to the current units that we're planning here that are compliant with the Hpd Design Guidelines. And those existing units are incredibly tight. They don't meet current handicap standards. We have a diagram that shows a comparison between the two of them at the end of this if that's necessary, but these are going to be much more contemporary units with storage, appliances that are more appropriate for today's lifestyle. These are the upper levels of the proposed design. So this is two diagrams. Go ahead.
Before you do,
Sure.
So this particular housing development organization has a lot of experience, and I don't know if you were the architect, but has a lot of experience with renovations of existing buildings.
Yep.
And Hpd certainly has a ton of experience with renovation of existing buildings, even buildings of this age group that are renovated to meet Hpd guidelines for minimum areas and facilities and all of that. So it wasn't that when we talked about retaining the existing building, we were saying you have to retain the existing layouts. It's more that you've got a building that's really built. I mean, we don't build like this anymore. And I see that the other projects, I don't know if that's your project, that was
15 Evans.
Yeah, so that one, you're actually retaining an existing building and building over and next to it. Why wasn't that the model here, where arguably there might have been not just cost savings, but an urbanistically more, perhaps more contextually consistent building? And as Commissioner Sheta said, maybe not even an issue in terms of structure because you have places to drop columns.
Yeah, so I can respond to all of that if now is an appropriate time.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So, 15 Evans was a very different project, much bigger site. And we actually did go through a rezoning of that site to achieve the bulk that we achieved there. There were some significant complications that allowed us to do what we did there. We had to reinforce columns, we had to reinforce footings, very invasive and very complicated project. But in the end, it's going to be a great project. This site does not really lend itself to that sort of adaptive reuse, vertical expansion, horizontal expansion. The courtyards that were mentioned by Commissioner Sheta, that's an interesting idea. But I think the more fundamental challenge is taking a 4-story building and expanding it vertically. That 4-story building was not originally designed for a vertical expansion that we would have to do to achieve what we're trying to achieve here. We would have to modify the existing foundations, which would be very invasive. The existing windows in the existing building are, overly small. We would have to be tearing apart the envelope to really achieve the right light and air for the new unit layouts that would have to be adapted. The existing core in the existing building, it's actually 2 stairs that are in very, very inconvenient spots. So those would not even be able to be reused. So it basically would be tearing apart the entire building. And by the time you're doing that, it just does not seem practical, feasible, a good use of public dollars. And we wouldn't get anywhere near the amount of units that we are going to be able to achieve with this approach. So it's a shame. I mean, I concur with you that it is a handsome building, that the brickwork the lintels. It is of an age of the city that it was, it's a very handsome building, but it's not feasible to adapt it for this use.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So these diagrams are what we are trying to, we're trying to represent these very complicated waivers that we are requesting. The plan is maybe the easiest way to understand where we're requesting them. So we have the gray area is our height that we are requesting a waiver on. Both grays, the dark gray and the light gray. This is the height that we're requesting. The setback is the darker gray. The setback above 65-foot maximum base height, we are not doing that. You can see that more clearly on the axonometric or the perspective. So the dashed blue line is the as of right volume. So we are extending up with our maximum height, and we're not providing the setback along Willoughby or Emerson. The orange area is the minimum base height that we are not achieving. So there is a 40-foot minimum base height for the quality housing program that comes along here. We are not meeting that. And the rear yard waiver that we are requesting, we are also not meeting that. And it's interesting, the rear yard that we're showing here is only 10 feet deep. The 10-foot deep is only 10 feet deep because there's a mechanism in the zoning resolution that says for shallow lots, you can reduce it, but it can't be any less than 10 feet. So we're asking for a waiver on the 10-foot. And all of this is basically, all of these waivers are being driven by us trying to make this building as efficient as possible. And I'm going to go back to the typical floor plan to try to illustrate that a little bit better. So where we've put the main corridor, the circulation band, is back here at the back of the property, where we do not need windows. It's nice to have windows. We don't need the windows. These are actually lot line windows, and they are not allowed as locations where we can get legal light and air for habitable rooms. But we've located all of the windows for the residents along the street frontages or this side yard that we've created here. So it's really being driven by that, trying to be very efficient in our site plan, given the shallowness of the lot. So that's why we've got the corridor back here. We've also been, I think, I hate to toot my own horn, but very clever about the superstructure. You can see these walls here. These are bearing walls, and we've sized these floor plates to use an 8-inch precast concrete plank that has a maximum span of 30 feet. So it's a very efficient superstructure, even given the complex site conditions that we've got to deal with. So so it's not so easy to start to like push and pull and squeeze and do things that you might think, well, it's just, extend the building or make it a little bit deeper. It's all an integrated design solution, integrated with the superstructure, integrated with the site plan, integrated with the unit layouts. So that's some of the background why we can't really reuse the existing building and some of the waivers that we are requesting. And that's the end of my technical presentation.
Okay. What's the back of the building look like?
The back of the building is intentionally very plain, and we do not have some renderings of that.
Okay.
David, do you want to?
No, you're the architect. Don't
okay.
get.
Well, there's a complex little thing here. I mean, I can certainly.
Yeah. So.
I'm staying with the architect.
Okay, fine. So I will do my best to answer this, and maybe David can.
Plain is different than sorry, looking like a prison.
Okay.
So you said you're very proud of this building, but you only show the money shot.
Well, there's two money shots. But so
we only saw the money shot from this side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to say I need a money shot from the other side because buildings are 3D.
Okay.
Right?
Absolutely agreed. I alluded to it earlier in the presentation. We know that there is a development that's going to be going on here. We actually have the ZRD1 or the ZD1 at the back end of this. If you want to take a look at that, we can look at that. But the building that's going to be here is a 17-story or 16-story building that is going to basically, conceal anything that we do back here. There might be a little sliver of this building that's going to be visible because they are doing like a side yard. I think it's like an 8-foot side yard. But whatever we do there is going to get concealed by this other development, which is a market rate development. We've reached out to that developer and had some communications with them about coordinating with our foundation. So it's a real project. And it's a real project, or they wouldn't have gotten the ZD1 through the Department of Buildings.
Wrong.
Okay.
We ZD1s for breakfast. People file ZD1s all the time and then nothing ever happens. Or ZD1s are filed and they build something else. Or ZD1s are filed as a way to sell the property to somebody else who then decides to do a different thing. So
Fair
until
Fair enough.
see and breaking ground with a project, you have a building that is 3-dimensional and needs to be treated as such. Okay. And I don't, frankly, I know the excuses about cost and all of that don't work for me. The building is visible, very, from
You
all
preempted
sides.
my next response.
Yes. Okay.
Is there anything that the board would accept, understanding that the ZD1 is not sufficient? We're going to prepare the rendering that you asked for from the rear, but is there any massing that we can include in that rendering to sort of show that there will be a building here based on,
No, there's no, until there's a building, there's no building. The urban context is, I'm seeing
this
a
existing
church,
context? I see.
a yard and a church, and it's a pretty church. And so far the view is to the church, right? And when I come up that side street, whatever that street is on the side, I see the prison that is otherwise known as a lovely low-income housing project where people are not supposed to know it's for low-income housing. But so far you can't tell that from the back, Mr. Wolfling.
Fair critique.
Chair, if we had some documentation from the church neighbor who has entered into a transaction with the developer and some indication from them about their timeline, would that in any
So it
way?
goes- No, so it goes like this. I know that doing an articulated facade is more money, right? So until there's a building under, like they've really started construction, we know there's a building going up there, you need to keep it in the project. You could always say at the end, come back to us for a letter of substantial compliance and say, look, a building is going to block this building by this much. Here's the diagram. We would therefore like to amend the facade so it's not articulated. But at the moment, and at the moment, there's no building there. You can't talk about some unknown future. And of course, the seller of the development site and so on has no idea what the actual plans are of a developer. As you well know, developers go out of business all the time. They sell, they transfer, they decide to build something else. They change their minds, blah, blah. Okay.
Okay, we hear you.
So let me ask one question that might help me in coming up with a response to this. If we do some sort of design that is maybe referential to our front stepping, which I think is as you've picked up, one of the really nice features of the building. If we were to bring some of that language to the back of the building, which I think would be very helpful, we would start to be creating these little tiny slivers of courts and very complicated little things that might not be permitted from a zoning perspective. So could we?
Wait.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do something extremely cool back there.
Absolutely.
There you go.
So I think, maybe the one thing I didn't touch on sufficiently is this side yard and how important it is to the development. There is an access point to it, and I think Nick, mentioned a lot of the operational issues that come along with that. I do think there is a really nice feature of this building, which is maybe subtle, but you see it here in this perspective, in that there is kind of a terracing and a stepping that I think is nice when you see this open space. I think if we were to infill this, the building becomes, a little bit less efficient. And that very shallow area of the building that I showed you in the typical floor plan, it just extends that, and then the proportions of the building really change, and that efficiency of the plank that I mentioned starts to get eroded and compromised. So I do think it's important that we keep the building floor plate relatively in the configuration that it is, and we keep that open space to the north.
I continue.
Okay, well, that's it. That was the last point I wanted to make.
Okay. So do you have someone else you have lined up to speak, or you want us to ask the questions that others should answer?
No, this is our presentation. We appreciate it. I know that you've all been here for a long time. I can go through the list of questions that I took during the review session if you like, or if any commissioners have questions that they feel haven't been addressed, we'd love to hear those now. We'll either answer them or respond in writing as warranted.
So I just want to make sure, because that's very important for me, that one of the things about the shadows on the park are a problem that's a potential impact, right? It should really be compared, whatever you think about the idea of adding to the existing building, you have 5,000 square feet to play with, right? You take your existing building as your as of right, and you add your 5,000 square feet to the maximum, say, floor plate and height that's allowed. So you stop at your, whatever it is, 75 feet. Let's just do that. Throw all your floor area on top of the existing building until you used it up to the maximum height, and your delta is to proposed.
Understood, and we'll prepare that shadow analysis. The reason that we use the as of right scenario that we use is because we were really trying to be sort of true to this variance doctrine, but for the relief from the board, we do not have a financially viable project, and therefore our as of right is not to add 5,000 square feet because the numbers don't work. If the board is comfortable sort of suspending disbelief, we'll prepare the as of right under those scenarios, but that does sort of rub against the variance statement, which is it's not financially viable, so the applicant won't do it.
No. Don't mix the not-for-profit variance with the for-profit variance. You don't have a B finding here.
Right.
What you have is a deference finding for the A based on the idea of providing a critical service or need of low-income housing, right? So you just stay up there. And the proof of critical need is that stuff that the financial calculations we were talking about before, that's not a B, that's an A finding.
Understood.
Okay, and so that's why for all not-for-profits, we always look at an as-of-right scenario where either everything that the not-for-profit would just do what it could to its maximum and then live with the results, right?
Okay.
So I think just for kind of ease of the analysis, just assume an addition to the side and to the top of the existing building that gets you to your maximum height and width, so that you to the extent you can with 5,000 square feet, so that your shadow study, the incremental shadow is better, because right now it's not good. I don't think it constitutes an impact because we haven't gotten parks yet, but they're looking at the wrong delta right now. Okay.
So Sam Schwartz is working on the incremental shadow analysis now. We received that comment from Jill and Tracy. We appreciate that. We will provide the as of right as you laid out. The as of right in the environmental, I believe, is still a no build.
Right. It shouldn't be.
So my question to you is, would you like? So we will also amend the EAS to be consistent with the maximum floor area as of right. So we'll amend both of those documents. Thank you for explaining that. We've got it.
So when we leave it as is, that's for a for-profit, where you just leave it alone. No variance means we're not going to do any work at all, whereas not-for-profits just kind of live with what they've got.
Okay. Since you brought something up that was on my list may I ask one other, or raise one other issue, because it was the next point? The soft commitment letter that we've been able to get from HPD for other projects, we were told that HPD is not issuing any soft commitment letters, and we are continuing to check in with them. We will continue to do so. But right now, we haven't been able to get a soft commitment letter from HPD. The last one I was able to get from HPD was sort of right before lockdown and everything sort of happened. I don't know if they've softened, but we'll check back with them.
Right, and also, there's nothing short of a soft commitment letter that's really available to us. I can say that we did meet with the Supportive Housing Loan Program Director about the project. They were very receptive to the concept. This was very early on. We did engage with them on very preliminary underwriting and have gotten at least one round of comments back from them. And those comments have informed the analysis that we've shared with you, but that's the extent of it at this point.
Okay. So I had a lot of questions for Mr. Bieber in terms of the analysis, but that may have been something that Commissioner Otley Brown is trying to, work through. So if you could just make sure that my questions are answered in the next submission, if they weren't already in your current submission that Commissioner Otley Brown is reading.
Sure.
Okay. All right, then. So let's go to the public. I don't know if there's any public to speak on this. There are people in the waiting room, that's why.
Okay, the application we're currently discussing is 2020-84BZ, 161 Emerson Place, Brooklyn. If you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 941-1784-0542. And the passcode should you require is 477426. And if you are calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If you're in the Zoom room already, please raise your Zoom hand.
Yeah, we have one person who raised her hand, a couple of people, Ann Bush and Zachary Fleckner Moore. So we'll start with Ann Bush. Please state your name when you can hear us. Go ahead. Ms. Bush, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Just turn off your YouTube video if it's on. Go ahead, Ms. Bush. Can you hear?
Do you want to try again?
Yeah, she's not muted. Okay, Ms. Bush, we see your hand up and we're allowing you to speak, but because you can't hear us, maybe we're going to go to the next person who would like to speak, Mr. Moore. We're allowing Mr. Moore to speak.
Is it Mr. Moore?
Hello?
Yes.
Zachary Clay Moore? Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Zachary Kleckner Moore.
Hi.
How's everyone doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Can I start or?
Yes, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to start off by telling my story about me and my mother, Diane Kleckner, who unfortunately passed away last year of COVID-19 and struggling with a long battle of cancer. We were originally living in Texas. I was born there in '97, and my mom, she was having some issues with my father and a family member of hers named Phyllis Gangel Jacob. She retired New York State Supreme Court judge, found this community, ICL, and thought it would be a great fit for myself and my mother to be able to help her financially, emotionally, and be able to give her the foundation to becoming a functioning member of society. So up until recently, me and my mother were a part of the system, and they, over the course of my life, they definitely got her the help she needed so desperately. My mother spoke very highly of everyone, every individual at Emerson, and ICL is truly staffed with some of the most beautiful people I've ever met, and most caring and really great individuals that want to help you succeed. And by me growing up in such a diverse group of individuals in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, in Emerson and Adelphi Street, it really it helped us strive for greatness and want to succeed. And I hope ICL looks at these accomplishments that my mother did for me and they did for my mother as something they can be proud of. And yeah, and last year when my mother passed, we started a fund that would go in her name, and hopefully it could help people in a similar situation and give them a better life. And I'm excited for their prospect of growth. And yeah, I'm very excited for them. I think they do really great work, and really changed my life around. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for calling in.
Thanks.
We appreciate the work of ICL. Ms. Bush, would you still like to speak? Can you hear us? Would you like to speak?
Oh, she put the mute on, but then she unmutes it, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. So Ms. Bush, you're not muted, and if you would like to speak, state your name. You're welcome to speak. Okay, well, let's see, maybe she's having trouble connecting. In the meantime, let's just ask the applicant team how much time they need to respond to our comments.
John, that's really a comment for you and design team. We can handle our revisions pretty quickly. So we need you to think about what you need in terms of preparing the new as-of-right study and responding to the board's questions. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just add to the commissioners. Ms. Bush is the, I believe she is the president of the Society for Clinton Hill, and I believe she has submitted written testimony as well. We really appreciate her coming out to the hearing, but since you couldn't hear her, you should be able to read her submission, which I believe was made, and I'll double check and make sure that it was part of the record.
Okay. All right, we still have, of course.
She had also registered, and so I just hopefully connected by telephone. It says that it was accepted.
Oh, thanks.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with the other thing. I'm sorry. You ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Ann Bush. I'm president of the Society for Clinton Hill, and we did the landmarking of the district back in 1981, and since then we monitor construction activity, which, as you know, over the last several years has been quite active, and any other actions that pose a threat to the quality of life for Clinton Hill residents. I have submitted our testimony in writing to the board. And if it's okay with everybody, and I know it's been a long day for you, I'm going to just update it and not repeat all of the that ICL does, because we all know that that's what we really need. Clinton Hill approved the proposal submitted by ICL for 161 Emerson Place. And we would urge that the board approve the proposal based on the following: the proven track record of ICL to administer supportive housing programs and the need to increase their capacity. Our current environment, which needs even more supportive housing programs right now, additional access to supportive programs and common area space, which would benefit other area residents. And finally, construction design that would not be out of character with the residential area. And we don't foresee that the major construction on this proposal would be directly obtrusive to any adjacent properties next to the construction. And I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bush. We appreciate your speaking and also your perseverance in making it through to the Zoom call.
Yes. I drove all the way in from Long Island and I kept pulling it over and I said, now let me go again. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're up to submit time. How much time?
So David, you answered your part. We'll need at least 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully we can do it before then, but we'll need 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, and the open environmental issues.
Yeah, we still have a few rounds of hazmat open, as well as noise and shadows.
right.
So that'll
So-
be a few months.
Okay.
Tracy, that's DEP looking at the work plan and the health and safety plan, or were there additional?
Right, they look at the work plan and then you have to do the testing, and then you get the report. So it's a few rounds. And I think there was noise comments issued.
If we could do this sort of in parts, because for me, from the point of view of the shadow, that's the neighborhood character aspect of the environmental, right? So maybe we could clean up the board's issues that have to do with the financial analysis and the programmatic analysis and so on. Do that in how much time? 4 weeks? Is that what we said for submission?
We can certainly do 4 weeks. We appreciate that.
Okay, so I'm not sure. This is tricky because we have a very, very full calendar and
I'm
a
aware.
lot of Commissioner Otley Brown for review. So I'm not sure that we're going to be able to accommodate this schedule. But we'll do what we can, okay?
We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So we'll let you know when the next hearing is, okay?
Okay, anything else? That's it?
I think that's it, right? Any other things from commissioners? Anybody have anything they want attended to? Just obviously respond to all the questions from the review session and anything that came up during the hearing, okay? Thank you all
Will do.
very much. Nice to meet you.
Great, thank you.
This concludes the public hearing for
Thanks,
May
all.
11th, 2021, 2 p.m. session. Good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.